We measure the farm by core hours, but should we be measuring it by RAM hours? Let's talk about it on A Cup of Joe. You know, I'm pretty sure if you subscribe to this channel, your renders will run a little faster. Try it, can't hurt. Hey, I want to talk really quick about this whole idea that I keep running into with studios where they're being more constricted by RAM than any other constraint on their render farms. So the reality is we always looked at core hours and looked at cores and how many cores a machine had and how many cores a job needed to figure out where to put it on the farm. But what's happened over the years, and it's really not a new story, but it's become an epidemic, is RAM is the shortage. RAM is what the constraint is. RAM is what the biggest concern is. Basically, jobs going onto the farm need to have a certain RAM footprint. Now, whatever machines they're going to land on, that might determine how many cores they get. But what they're really determining on how much farm they need is by the RAM. Now, if you haven't seen some of my previous videos on like the render dieting and why consuming less RAM will generally get you more jobs on your farm, please go take a look at those, and I'll link to that right here. However, just to recap on this, the idea is that shows and studios will often set up a standard job. Let's just say they have a bunch of Intel machines with 36 physical cores and 192 gigs of RAM. And that averages out to about 5.3 gigabytes of RAM per core. Now they might decide that, hey, your average job needs to be at least, or needs to have at least 32 gigs of memory. So if they do that, the math says they'll basically get 6 cores per job. Now they're not saying, hey, how many cores do I need for this job? Let me get 6 cores and see how much RAM I get. They're saying, how much RAM do I need? Now there might be another studio that has a bunch of AMD machines with 128 physical cores per machine and maybe 512 gigs of RAM. We rent these type of machines out all the time. Now here you've got 4 gigabytes per core still, because although you've got all those cores, you've got all this extra RAM. And there, it might be that they decide to stick to that 32 gigabyte per job constraint. Like that's the size of a job they want to make available for your artist. That's how much machine should be available. And in this case, they're going to get 8 cores per job. Now they're not going to choose, you know, I want 6 cores versus 8 cores. They're going to choose these gigabytes per job as the standard for what they're choosing as to how big their job can be, how much farm do they need. It's all about RAM hours. At SIGGRAPH this year, I'm co-organizing the render farming birds of a feather discussion, and I'm sure we're going to go into big discussion about how RAM is the biggest constraint. And not only is it the biggest constraint when we're talking about CPU, we're also seeing it on the GPU. When studios are deciding what kind of GPU to buy, they're looking at the RAM footprint. They're not really counting the tensor cores on a card and comparing it to another card's tensor core count. They're looking at the RAM footprint. They're saying, am I going to be able to get 12 or 24 gigs per job? Because in the end, the biggest constraint for all these big visual effects jobs is RAM. So let's stop calling it core hours and let's start focusing on RAM hours. I'd love to know what you think.